What would happen if a starving noble found a god's power hidden in a filthy slum market? Lurels had died once already, but his second life began with a frontier sentence that was almost worse than death. By the time the wilderness understood what he carried inside his soul, 200 fearless swamp warriors were already kneeling. 3 days ago, he died in his old world, drowning while trying to save someone, and woke up in this body. A broken, hungry body living in the 9th district of Lawrence City, the worst slum in the Griffin Kingdom. The air here stinks of waste. The people look half dead, and his only food is black bread so hard even dogs wouldn't touch it. This world is stuck somewhere around medieval times, but it has magic gods, dragons, demons, and creatures from underground that raid the surface and slaughter whole towns. Ordinary people like him are nothing here. Powerless, poor, invisible. The person whose body he took over was the last of the Els family. His father Baron Els died 10 years ago from an old wound, and the family fell apart after that. By kingdom law, if nobody claims a noble title within 7 years, it's taken away. The original Lurels was too young, only 15 when the deadline passed. So the family lost everything. He ended up in the slums. To get the title back, there's only one path. Become a frontier lord. That means going into the wilderness beyond the kingdom's borders and building a settlement there. It sounds simple, but over 2,000 years, the kingdom has only pushed 1,000 miles into that land, and the dead frontier lords could fill a mountain. Orcs, vampires, undead. Dark elves, demons. The wilderness has all of them. The original Lurels replied, anyway. He figured starving to death in the slums was no better than taking a chance out there. But his body was so weak, he died from a simple fall before he even got started. That's when he arrived. His neighbor Jim, a kind old man, a former knight who works at the docks, now tried to talk him out of it. He told him everything that waits in the wilderness. He hoped the Duke would reject his application, but today a soldier came to his door with a sealed document. Duke Lauren approved it. He was to report tomorrow morning to receive his supplies and choose his territory. The paper also confirms his inheritance. He was now Baron Lures again. There's no backing out. By law, any frontier lord who refuses to go or makes excuses is hanged as a deserter. In a world full of people with supernatural power, running isn't really an option either. He stood there staring at the document, feeling the weight of it all. Was just staying alive really this hard? And then a faint blue light appeared in his mind. It gathered into a glowing panel with words on it. Detection complete. You have become a lord. The intelligence system is now active. He jumped to his feet, his heart pounding. Whatever this system was, it might just be the one thing that could keep him alive out there. After Jim left, he turned his attention to the intelligence system in his mind. It refreshes every 5 days and shows him 5 pieces of information each, ranked by how valuable it is from 1 star up to 6. Since this was his first time, he got a bonus. 1 piece guaranteed to be 5 stars or higher. He commanded the system to refresh, and 5 entries started appearing on the glowing blue panel. The first 2 were only 1 star. One was about a supply officer named Durr, planning to take a bribe and give special frontier supplies to some noble family called Roe. Not useful to him. His family's rank is too low to qualify for those supplies anyway. The second warned that over 100 ogres would attack a town called Windmill Town, north of the city. Dangerous stuff, but nothing he could do about it. The third and fourth were 2 star, much better. The third told him that at the 9th district, Black Market Stall 13 was selling tree saplings labeled as ordinary red leaf trees, but they were actually lava fruit trees, a magical plant. Lava fruits restore magic power and sell for 10 gold coins each. A regular person earns maybe 5 or 6 gold in a whole year. Someone was selling these precious saplings at the price of common wood. If he could buy them, the profit would be enormous. The fourth was about Felina Lauren, the eldest daughter of the family that rules this entire city. She's a level 16 Grand Mage, only 24 years old, powerful enough to destroy a city. She's been searching for a magical plant called blue crystal grass, and the system told him exactly where to find it. 200 kilometers northwest of the city, in a valley full of lies. The plant itself might not be worth much on its own, but if someone that powerful wants it, its value skyrockets. This could be his way to fund everything he needed. Then the fifth piece of information appeared and it glowed gold. 6 stars, the highest possible rating. His heart nearly stopped when he read it. In the 9th District, black market tomb raiders had stolen a cloudy crystal from an ancient tomb. On the morning of July 8th at sunrise, they'd sell it at stall 23 near the market entrance. That crystal contained a fragment of the swamp god's shattered divine power. All he had to do was let a drop of his blood fall on it, and he could take control of that fragment of God's power, the power of a being that rules this world. And it was about to go on sale at a market stall right here in his district. His hands were shaking. This system, it was truly terrifying. It took him a while to calm down after seeing that 6-star information. A fragment of a god's power just sitting there waiting to be sold at a market stall. He had to get it. But the problem was obvious. He had no money. He could not fight anyone either. He had not even formed a magic seed yet. He was just an ordinary person in a world full of powerful beings. Robbing the tomb raiders wasn't an option. So he needed a plan. He had to use the smaller pieces of intelligence to earn money first, then go after the divine fragment. The third piece of information was the easiest to act on. The lava fruit tree saplings being sold as cheap red leaf trees at stall 13 in the 9th District Market. He decided to start there. He went to the corner of his room, moved a loose brick, and pulled out 3 silver coins. That was everything the original owner of this body had left. 100 copper coins make 1 silver, and 1 copper buys a loaf of that awful black bread. These 3 coins were enough to survive on for maybe 4 months. Now he was about to gamble them on the system's information. He walked 20 minutes through the winding alleys to the market. The place was full of poor people and patched-up clothes bargaining hard over every copper coin. He passed through the small vendors and reached the main section counting stalls until he found number 13. It was a fruit shop run by a thin man with a limp. He noticed a triangle tattoo on his arm, the mark of the Pure Blood Brotherhood, a local gang. The shop was probably a front. He knew he had to be careful and not show what he was really after. He spotted the lava fruit tree saplings right away. They were covered in foul-smelling mud with just a few red leaves poking out. You couldn't tell them apart from ordinary red leaf saplings just by looking. He asked to buy several kinds of common saplings, green fruit, long leaf, and red leaf, mixing his real target in with the rest. There were only 12 lava fruit saplings, so he took all of them along with other cheap ones. He spent 2 silver coins on 40 saplings total, and after plenty of haggling, the man threw in 5 extra just to get rid of him. He spat on the ground as he left, calling him a clueless slum kid. Meanwhile, he had no idea he'd just sold him plants worth a fortune. He carried the bundle of muddy saplings through back alleys, slipping out of the 9th District without trouble. Nobody gave him a second look. The saplings were dirty and seemed worthless. Outside the slums, the city was a different world. Talented buildings with stained glass windows, walls covered in beautiful plaster carvings praising gods and heroes. Noble ladies peeked from windows. It was stunning, and the contrast with the filth he'd just come from felt almost cruel. He did not stop to admire it. He had somewhere to be. He hired a carriage and headed for the city center. By sunset, he stood in front of the Rose Estate, the home of the Lauren family. A fountain misted the air at the gate, making a rainbow. The walls were over 10 meters high, lined with angel statues and climbing roses. It was the most beautiful place he had ever seen. Guards watched him with sharp eyes as he walked forward. They stopped him immediately. "This is the Rose Estate." He raised the small tree in his hand. He found the magical plant that Princess Felina offered a reward for the blue crystal grass. The guard stopped him at the gate. A tall knight in black armor and a crimson cloak stepped forward, looking him over with suspicion. He was holding muddy saplings and wearing patched clothes. He clearly did not belong here. He told him he did not have the blue crystal grass with him, but he knew where it was. He did not look convinced. He kept his voice steady and explained that no one would risk their life just to lie to the princess. He told him he only needed to pass the message along. If he was wrong, the blame would fall on him, not him. He was starting to come around when the sound of horses interrupted us. 7 white unicorns pulled a carriage wrapped in blooming roses around the corner. As it passed, the plants along the street seemed to wake up, standing taller, turning greener. Roses on the walls swayed without any wind. The air filled with a sweet fragrance. It was like watching a goddess arrive. The coachwoman was a golden-haired girl in a dark blue gown, beautiful enough to be a noble woman herself. But she was just the attendant. Then the passenger stepped out, Felina Lauren. She had skin like jade, flawless features, and deep blue eyes that could hold anyone's gaze. Her brown hair floated as if weightless. She wore a black robe with faint rose patterns, elegant and noble in every way. Every guard placed a hand on their chest and bowed. The tall knight was trembling with respect. In this world, there are two paths to power knights and mages. Knights strengthen their bodies. Mages control magic. Mages rank from apprentice up through junior, intermediate, senior, advanced, grand crown, and finally transcendent. Each rank has 3 levels. Most mages never get past intermediate. Felina was already a level 16 grand mage at 24, the youngest magic prodigy in the history of the Griffin Empire. A grand mage can cast war spells powerful enough to destroy half a city. In the whole empire, only a handful of people have ever gone higher than that. He greeted her with a proper noble's bow, hand on shoulder, polite nod. She noticed and seemed curious. She told him she'd heard our conversation through the air itself, some kind of magic. He reminded himself again how extraordinary this world was. He told her he knew where the blue crystal grass grew and that he'd come for the reward. She was surprisingly direct. She explained the grass was a key ingredient for a potion she needed and asked him what he wanted in return. He could not help pointing out that she wasn't much of a negotiator. She smiled faintly, studied his patched clothes and calm eyes, and suggested he tell her the location first, promising a reward that would satisfy him. He gave it to her without hesitating. 200 kilometers northwest of Lawrence City, in a valley full of lees. Information is only worth something when you trade it to the right person at the right time. Holding back would have gained him nothing. She seemed surprised by how quickly he answered. Then she asked if he wasn't afraid she'd break her promise. After all, she was the princess, and no one would believe a poor man's complaint against her. He looked at her, thought about the 6-star golden intelligence glowing in his mind, and answered calmly, he's not afraid. The cost of breaking your word might be more than you can afford. Felina's eyes lit up with curiosity. He told her that even the children of the 9th district praised her name. Surely she wouldn't cheat him over a single plant. It was flattery, and we both knew it. But she seemed more interested in the confidence behind his words than the words themselves. She turned to the silver-helmeted knight Ruel and ordered him to go retrieve the blue crystal grass immediately. He knelt on one knee, eyes burning with devotion, and accepted the command like it was the greatest honor of his life. He almost wanted to laugh. In this world, a single word from someone like her could make a grown man tremble with pride. Then she chanted a spell in a strange language and raised her head toward the sky. An eagle's cry echoed above us. A massive shadow dropped from the clouds. A griffin lion's body. Falcon's head, eagle wings stretching over 10 meters wide. Its amber eyes were sharp as arrows. Standing on the ground, its shoulders were over 3 meters high. The pressure coming off it made it hard to breathe. But he was not afraid. He was excited. This was the real magic of this world. Creatures that could never exist on Earth. He looked at the griffin and thought that riding one through the sky would be the most thrilling thing imaginable. Felina noticed his reaction. She seemed surprised that an ordinary person with no magic core wasn't scared at all. That he was looking at her war beast like a kid staring at a toy. Rel mounted the griffin and took off. The wings kicked up a whirlwind as it rose into the sky and vanished into the clouds. Felina asked his name. He introduced himself properly, Lurels, with a noble's greeting. Then she surprised him. She asked to buy the lava fruit saplings he was carrying. She explained that the trees take 20 years of careful nurturing before they bear fruit. 20 years. By then, they'd be useless to him. Only old noble families with centuries of wealth could afford to wait that long. He handed over all 12 saplings without hesitation. She took the muddy little plants in her pale hands, and the moment she touched them, they straightened up and came alive as if blessed by some goddess of growth. She told him to come back tomorrow after he chose his frontier territory, and she'd give him his full reward. Then she promised it would satisfy him. He agreed. Then he added as casually as he could that he was a bit short on money and asked if she could lend him 100 gold coins. The guards were stunned. A ragged man from the slums asking the princess for money. They looked like he'd insulted their goddess. Felina herself did not know whether to laugh or sigh, but she waved to her maid, a blonde girl named Molly, and told her to hand over the coins. He thanked her generously, perhaps a bit too generously, calling her magnanimous and admirable. She actually laughed at that. Molly brought him a small cloth bag. He opened it, counted the coins, confirmed it was correct, and put it away. Felina watched him do all of this without a hint of embarrassment and smiled to herself. He said his goodbyes and left quickly. He'd already done the math before coming. The 12 lava fruit saplings were worth maybe 30 gold coins on the open market. The blue crystal grass information was worth about 50, so 100 gold coins was already more than he'd expected. The supplies Felina promised for later were just a bonus. He knew when to stop. A smart gambler doesn't chase every last coin. He knows when to leave the table. And right now, in just half a day, he'd turned 2 pieces of 2-star intelligence into a full purse. The 1-star pieces of information were useless to him. He had no way to act on them. But the 5th piece, the 6-star golden intelligence, the swamp god's divine fragment, that was different. July 8th at sunrise, it was coming soon and he had to be ready. On the morning of July 8th, he put on a black cloak that covered his face and walked into the 9th District's black market. The black market was famous across the entire northern province. It opened once every 3 days, hidden among old ruins deep in the poorest slums. The irony wasn't lost on him. Enormous wealth-changing hands in the most miserable place in the city. The crowd was thick and more than half the people had their faces covered like his. The stall sold everything imaginable. Strange minerals, beast fangs, swords, glowing potions, chained half-elf servants, and even 20 full sets of royal army armor with the Griffin Empire seals still on them, sold right out in the open. This place had no rules. He counted stalls as he walked. The system had told him the crystal would appear at the 23rd stall near the entrance at sunrise. When he reached that spot, he found only an old one-armed man selling colorful stones. No crystal ball anywhere. He searched through his 30 or 40 rocks carefully. Nothing. Then the sun broke through the morning mist and lit up the city. Right at that moment, 3 men in worn clothes carrying heavy leather backpacks walked up beside him. They smelled of earth. The one in the middle was small and quiet, with a colorful toy propeller stuck in his backpack. A strange, almost childlike detail in a place like this. Without a word, they spread a dirty cloth on the ground next to the stall and started unpacking. The quiet man pulled out a yellowish crystal ball. His heart jumped. They had just set up in front of the old man's stall, making theirs the 23rd. The system was exactly right. He calmed himself and asked to look at their items. They agreed, just warning him to handle things gently since everything was old. He took his time. He examined each piece one by one for about 10 minutes before picking up the crystal ball. It was fist-sized cold, covered in scratches from years underground. It looked completely ordinary. No one would ever guess that inside it hid the fragment of a god's power, something that could drive the entire world mad. He set it back down casually and kept browsing as if he had no special interest in it. Then he started asking prices. An ivory bowl, 10 gold. An ivory cup, 12. He asked about several items before pointing at the crystal ball, 10 gold coins. He pretended to hesitate, picked 7 items, put 4 back, and kept 3, including the crystal. He asked for a bulk discount. They said they never bargained, but offered all 3 for 28 gold. He countered with 20 silver coins, practically nothing. The man's face changed. He said it was robbery. After a long back and forth, we settled on 20 gold coins for all 3 pieces. Both sides seemed satisfied. The old seller next to us looked regretful. He wished he'd tried to sell to him first. Before he left, he noticed the colorful toy propeller on the quiet man's backpack. He asked if he'd part with it. He paused, then took it off with a small smile. His daughter gave it to him this morning, but if you like it, take it. His daughter. Even tomb raiders in this harsh world had people they loved and came home to. He thanked him and walked out of the black market holding a colorful bamboo dragonfly in one hand and a bag of ancient relics in the other. His face was calm, but inside he was barely holding it together. The swamp god's divine fragment was his. The most precious treasure in this world, bought for 20 gold coins at a dirty stall in the slums. In just 2 days he had drawn the ultimate card. The moment he stepped out of the black market, the intelligence system activated on its own. Completing the 6-star mission had unlocked 3 bonus pieces of information. Apparently, finishing any mission rated 4 stars or higher triggers extra intelligence. The first told him how to use the divine fragment. He needed to drip his blood onto the crystal ball and the swamp divinity core would merge with his soul. The catch was that he'd fall into a deep sleep for 10 hours during the process, so he had to make sure he was somewhere safe. The second piece was about tomorrow's territory selection. Among the available lands, there was one called the Muddy Swamp, and hidden inside it was a fragment of swamp authority. A divine core is just an empty container. Authority is the actual power that fills it. Without both, divine power is useless. He had to claim that territory before any other frontier lord got to it. The third piece told him about the slave market in District 2. A trading company called Dragon Fong was going to auction 2 squads of swamp lizard folk tomorrow afternoon. 200 fighters, all level 6 junior knights. The traders couldn't control them anymore and wanted to sell fast while below market value. Normally, a single level 6 knight costs 100 gold coins. With the divinity core, he could bring these lizard folk under his command and make them the first army of his new territory. He had only a few dozen gold coins left. He was not sure he could afford them all. But if he came up short, well, Princess Felina and he were already on good terms. Borrowing a little more shouldn't be too hard. He took a carriage to the Rose House, the finest inn in Lawrence City, owned by Felina herself. The cheapest room cost 1 gold coin a night. An ordinary worker earned 6 gold in an entire year, but he was not spending money for luxury. The Rose House sat about a kilometer from the Grand Duke's mansion in the most heavily guarded part of the city. After what he was about to do, he needed the safest place he could find. He checked in, went up to the 10th floor using a dwarf-built elevator, hung a Do Not Disturb sign on the door, locked up and drew the curtains. He set 3 items on the table and pushed the other 2 aside. Only the scratched-up crystal ball mattered now. He read the instructions one more time. Then he bit his finger. A drop of blood fell onto the crystal. The moment it touched the ball, exploded with light, turning the dim room as day. A strange energy surged around it, swirling but not spreading beyond the crystal. Then the blood guided that energy into his body. What poured into him felt sacred, vast, and endless, like staring into a sky full of stars. It was so powerful that even his soul felt cleansed. The energy kept coming until it reached some kind of limit and finally settled. The crystal glowed like a small sun for 5 straight hours, sending out waves of holy, untouchable power. Then slowly it went dark. It slipped from his hand and fell onto the bed. The room went quiet. No trace of energy remained. He was already deep asleep. Somewhere inside him, his soul was changing into something new. He did not know how long he slept, but when he finally opened his eyes, everything had changed. Deep inside his mind, he could feel a whirlpool of deep blue energy, vast and powerful like the sea. A word appeared in his thoughts, seed of magic. He had become a mage, not just a beginner either. Somehow the divine fragment had pushed him all the way to level 3 apprentice mage in a single night. A new panel appeared in his mind showing his full attributes. The intelligence system had unlocked an extra function. He could now see everything clearly. His level, his mana, his skills, all of it. He had 2 new abilities. Touch of the Wetlands could heal living things in a small area, working especially well on swamp creatures. Divine might let him release the lingering pressure of the swamp god to intimidate a target. If it worked, the target's soul would be marked and become permanently loyal. If it failed, they'd attack him instead. His potential was listed at 2 stars, meaning he could reach level 9 at most on his own. But the most important line was the Divine Core Swamp 10%. When he focused his mind, he could sense it at the center of his magic seed. A broken, glowing blue sphere, radiating ancient pressure like a god being slowly reborn. If he could find the remaining fragments and gather them, all he could one day become a true deity. He stood up, opened the curtains, and looked out at the sunset, painting the sky gold and red. The city of Lawrence stretched out below him, grand and alive. He clenched his fist toward the horizon. For the first time since arriving in this world, he felt like he had a real chance. The next morning, July 9th, he put on the one thing He'd refused to sell a black noble robe with a golden iris embroidered on it, the crest of the Els family. Before inheriting his title, he wasn't even allowed to wear it. Wearing a noble crest without permission was a serious crime in this empire. But now, he was Baron Lurels again, and this robe was the last trace of his family's history. He arrived at the Grand Duke's mansion where the territory selection ceremony would be held. More than 100 frontier lords had already gathered in a large hall, standing in small groups and talking quietly. Every one of them wore their family crests proudly, even the ones whose families had clearly fallen on hard times. Noble pride ran deep here. He found an empty seat. Two nobles in white robes sat beside him talking excitedly about the Grand Duke and his legendary strength, how he defeated a dragon with his bare hands 100 years ago. Then they started talking about Felina, hoping she might appear today. They called her the Flower of the North, the Rose of Lauren. The younger one said that just being noticed by her would be worth everything. He listened quietly. What interested him wasn't her beauty or her title. It was what kind of reward she'd give him. A goddess shouldn't be stingy. Then the hall went silent. Felina walked in through the main entrance wearing a white gown with silver thread and long black lace gloves. Her hair floated behind her like it weighed nothing. Every pair of eyes followed her. The frontier lords bowed deeply one after another. The two nobles beside him dropped to one knee, faces red with excitement like they wanted to kiss the ground. She walked on. She moved through this crowd and stopped in front of him. Our eyes met. He placed his hand on his shoulder and gave a proper noble's greeting. A small bow of the head, nothing more. She smiled faintly and returned the same gesture a companion's greeting, equal to equal. Everyone else had received only a nod, the kind you give to subordinates. Good day, Lord Lurels. Good day, Princess Felina. The two nobles kneeling beside him looked up with wide eyes. Who was he? Why had their goddess greeted him personally? Their grand knightly bows had not earned them a single glance. And here he was, receiving a companion's greeting while sitting in a chair. They looked like clowns who'd just realized the joke was on them. Felina's greeting put every eye in the hall on him, but neither of us cared. She was used to being the center of attention. And after merging with the divine fragment, his mindset had changed. Even someone as extraordinary as her could not shake his focus anymore. She stepped onto the platform and gave a speech. Her voice started soft and grew powerful, talking about the empire's 2,000-year history, about ancestors who bled for its glory, about how every person standing here had already proven their courage by choosing this path. She called us heroes. The crowd ate it up. Faces flushed, blood boiling, everyone ready to charge into the wilderness right then and there. He understood the feeling better than most. You had to live as a fallen noble broke, forgotten, clinging to the last scraps of pride to truly understand what those words meant. Then she moved to the real business. A magic map appeared behind her, glowing blue, alive with flowing rivers and swaying trees. It showed the wilderness surrounding Lawrence City, built from over 1,000 years of exploration. Green zones marked territories already claimed or still within their 5-year development period. Everything else was open. There were maybe 200 or 300 green zones scattered across the map, half a town icons. Compared to the vast wilderness, they looked tiny. In 1,000 years, only about 100 territories had been successfully established. Most of them small towns within 300 to 500 kilometers of the city. That alone told you everything about the survival rate of frontier lords. Some people's excitement cooled when they saw those numbers, but others burned hotter, staring at the town icons with hungry eyes. A few of those settlements had grown to over 200,000 people. The families who built them held real power. And Lawrence City itself, the greatest city in the north, had been founded 1,000 years ago by the first frontier lord, the original Duke of Lauren. If he could do it, why not them? Felina told everyone to begin choosing. He spoke up first. Your Highness, he had already made his choice. Every head turned toward him. Felina's eyes flickered with curiosity. Lord Lurels, your choices. He pointed at the map. The muddy swamp, the hall erupted. People could not believe it. The muddy swamp was over 1,000 kilometers from Lawrence City, more than half a month of travel. No one in history had ever successfully built a territory that deep into the wilderness. Felina warned him herself. She said the dangers that far out were beyond imagination. He answered quietly, if no one has done it, then he will be the first. The room went still. Then he saw something shift in the faces around him. Respect. Whatever they thought of his chances, the words themselves struck a nerve. That was the whole point of being a frontier lord, wasn't it? Going where no one else dared. Felina looked at him for a long moment. Lord Laurels, your courage is admirable. He could tell she was genuinely curious. She could not figure out where a poor fallen noble had found this kind of confidence, but he knew something she did not. Hidden in that swamp was a fragment of divine authority, the missing piece that would make his divinity core complete. The swamp wasn't a death trap for him. It was exactly where he needed to be. He did not stay long after choosing his territory. The lizard folk auction was this afternoon, and tomorrow would bring a new refresh of the intelligence system. He had plenty to do, but as he was leaving the hall, Felina's blonde maid, Jasmine, stopped him and asked him to follow her to a side room. Felina wanted to see him. He waited a few minutes before she walked in, graceful as always, her long hair floating behind her. She started by reminding him he still owed her 100 gold coins. He told her we were friends and that once he built his territory, he'd pay her back double. She laughed at the word friends and said it was an honor. Then she got to the point. She told him the blue crystal grass had been retrieved successfully. It turned out to be an ingredient she needed for her promotion from level 16 to level 17. No wonder she'd been so eager to find it. He told her we were even. She got what she needed for her advancement, and he got 100 gold coins when he had nothing. She smiled and said he could not count things that simply. She'd sent someone to look into his situation and had prepared supplies for him. Jasmine handed him a list. He read through it carefully. Food farming tools, ironware, 30 wagons worth of goods, but the real treasure was at the bottom. 1,000 gold coins in cash, 200 sets of standard Lawrence City Guard armor, and 100 slave craftsmen. The armor alone was worth a fortune. 20 gold coins per set, 200 sets. That was 4,000 gold coins total. A common worker would need 800 years to earn that much. He looked at her and told her he would remember her kindness. She teased him for being too formal between friends. He paused, then smiled. Then let's get to know each other again. He was Laurels. Greetings, Felina Lauren. Her maid's expression shifted. Calling the princess by her first name was unheard of. But Felina sensed the sincerity behind it. Something softened in her eyes and she returned the greeting the same way. Greetings, Laurels. He was Felina Lauren. Then she waved her hand and a small wooden cage appeared out of thin air. Inside sat a chubby gray insect munching on green leaves. It looked like nothing special, just a fat bug. She called it a swamp mud insect, something she'd found in ancient ruins. She said that according to legend, when fully grown, it could prey on dragons. But it had been sleeping in those ruins for too long. And even after feeding it many magical plants, she could not restore its power. She thought maybe returning it to a swamp would help. She gave it to him as a symbol of our friendship. He took the tiny creature on his finger and stared at it. This little thing could hunt dragons only in a fantasy world. But he knew something she did not. His swamp divinity core controlled swamp life. If anything could wake this insect up, it was the power now living inside his soul. He thanked her, then reached into his chest and pulled out something of his own. The colorful bamboo dragonfly he'd gotten from the Tomb Raider at the black market. Crooked, childish, a toy his daughter had made for him. Her maid stared at it in disbelief. After everything the princess had given him, this was his gift in return. But Felina took it gently, smiling as she turned it over in her hands. Your gift? He accepted? It's the first time someone has given him such a special present. She stored it carefully, then pressed 3 fingers to her forehead and lifted her hand toward the sky. May the goddess be with you always. Her eyes were warm but serious as she looked at him. He understood what she meant without her saying it. Come back alive from the wilderness his friend. He intended to. After leaving Felina, he got into a carriage and headed for the slave market. On the way, he thought about something interesting. When he'd looked at Felina earlier, a status panel had appeared in his mind showing her level. Archmage level 16. Her potential was hidden behind question marks too far above him to read. Her maid Jasmine was a level 12 advanced knight strong enough to teach at the Royal Academy. The intelligence system could read other people's attributes too. That was incredibly useful. He kept 1,000 gold coins on him and sent the rest of Felina's supplies to the Rose House for safekeeping. The slave market was about an hour away in District 22, the biggest in the entire north. When he arrived, the place was nothing like the black market. It was massive, operating day and night. Dark Gothic buildings blocked out the sun. The walls were covered in stone carvings, knights charging demons, killing angels descending. Rose-shaped stained glass windows cast dim colored light inside. The streets were wide but packed with people, and the air was thick with the smell of sweat rot and waste. On both sides of the street, slave traders displayed rows of steel cages stacked on top of each other. Inside were slaves from every race imaginable: orcs, goblins, half-elves, snake people, minotaurs, barbarians. Some were captured soldiers, some were civilians taken by traders, and some were humans who had sold themselves out of hunger. The most common were orcs, strong, brutal, and popular with buyers. But at 200 gold coins each, he could not afford many. He found the Dragon Fong Trading Guild quickly. The sign out front had a permanent magic spell on it. Anyone who looked at it could instantly understand the words even if they could not read. A mental message straight into your brain. The guild master, a cheerful, chubby merchant named Macon, greeted him warmly. He started pitching his best-selling slaves, orcs, and minotaurs. He cut straight to the point and asked about swamp creatures. He looked surprised, but offered 3 types. Swamp works at 50 gold, each half fish, people at 20, and mud dwarves at 20. All decent for swamp life, but none were what he needed. He asked if he had anything stronger. He thought about it and said no. Swamps were rare in the wilderness, so swamp slaves were hard to come by. No lizard folk. His stomach tightened. Was the system's information wrong? Then a young worker rushed over and whispered something to Mac. He caught the words wetland lizard men and rebelled again. Macon's face twisted with frustration. He muttered about trying to sell them to the arena, but even the arena had refused. The lizard folk were too savage to manage. He spoke up immediately. Wetland lizard men? What level are they? Macon turned to him hesitating. He said they were all level 6 junior knights, but extremely fierce. Even with slave rings, he could not control their aggression. He honestly advised him to buy swamp orcs or half-fish people instead. He appreciated his honesty. He could have just dumped them on him without warning, but he insisted on seeing them. He told him maybe the lizard folk weren't as bad as he thought. He laughed at that. What he did not know was that a week ago there had been 3 squads. Now only 2 remained. The lizard folk had been killing each other or their handlers, and numbers were dropping fast. He shrugged and agreed to take him to see them. Better to sell them quickly, he said, before there was only 1 squad left. He followed Macon into the back hall. It was wider than the front, filled with iron cages stacked 3 layers high. The air was surprisingly clean. They maintained this area well. We passed rows of chained slaves until we reached the center, where 20 cages sat on the ground. Inside were his targets, wetland lizard folk. They were impressive. Thick scales covered their bodies. Green and gray-brown natural camouflage for swamp life. They stood upright on muscular legs with fingers sharp as daggers. Their lizard heads had amber eyes full of fury, and when they opened their mouths, their teeth looked like razors. His status panel activated automatically. Level 6? Junior Knights? 1-star potential. Meaning they'd already hit their natural ceiling. They had 2 skills scales, which gave them armor-like defense and ferocity, which made them enter a berserk state when fighting or taking damage. Fearless of pain, attacking without stopping. The moment we got close, they went wild. They screamed curses in their lizard language, charged the bars, and bit the iron with screeching sounds. Even chained at the hands, feet, and neck. They showed 0 fear. Macon explained the situation. A week ago, there had been over 340 of them. Now only 203 remained. The Ring of Enslavement, a magic device that transfers pain directly to the soul, normally broke any slave's will. Even orcs could not resist it, but these lizard folk could. When a slave resists the ring hard enough, it detonates and blows their head apart. Over 100 lizard folk had died that way already. They'd rather die than submit. For a slave trader, that was a nightmare. For him, it was perfect. A force of killing machines that feared neither pain nor death. If he could make them truly loyal instead of forcing obedience, they'd be the most terrifying army a frontier lord could ask for. And with his swamp divinity core, he could do exactly that. Macon offered them at 20 gold coins each, far below what he'd paid. He countered with 10. His face twitched, but he could see he wasn't desperate. He knew nobody else wanted these creatures. He gritted his teeth and agreed. He told him there was one problem. He only had 1,000 gold coins on him. 200 lizard folk at 10 gold each meant 2,000 total. He asked to pay 1,000 now and the rest in 3 days. Tomorrow the intelligence system would refresh, and he was confident he could earn the difference. And if not, well, Felina and he were practically old friends by now. Borrowing another 1,000 shouldn't be too hard. Before Macon could answer, 2 lizard folk went berserk in their cages. They smashed their heads and claws against the bars, screaming with terrifying fury. Then 2 explosions. Their heads burst like watermelons, blood everywhere. The rings of enslavement had detonated. They'd resisted the soul-tearing pain until the very end. Macon's face went stiff. He turned to him, trying to apologize, but before he could finish, another explosion. A 3rd lizard man dead. The blood smell was overwhelming. Macon lost it completely. 1,000 gold coins. Take them all right now. Get them out of here. He was done. He never wanted to see these creatures again. He handed over the money without hesitating. The sight of exploding heads and the thick smell of blood made his heart race. He'd seen dead bodies in the alleys of the 9th District before, but never anything like this. He forced himself to breathe slowly and push the feeling down. In this world, there's no room for weakness. Scenes like this would become normal soon enough. He handed Macon the bag of gold coins. He took it and was about to check the amount when he noticed something. The rose pattern on the bag. His eyes went wide. That mark belonged exclusively to Princess Felina. No one in the city would dare copy it. He looked at him differently after that. He told him plainly that the coins were a gift from the princess and that most frontier lords aren't wealthy. Accepting help is just practical. He swallowed hard, nodding along, but he could see his mind racing, trying to figure out who he really was. His respect went up another notch when a servant confirmed the gold was genuine. He handed him a staff half an arm long used to control the rings of enslavement around the lizard folks' necks. The rings drew energy from the slaves themselves, so they'd work as long as the slaves were alive. Any resistance would trigger punishment automatically. He told him to deliver the lizard folk to the Rose House. He agreed, but warned him there might be losses during transport. These creatures were like ticking bombs. He turned to face the cages. The lizard folk were restless, screaming curses in their harsh language eyes, burning with defiance even through shackles and slave rings. It was time to use his power. He reached into the swamp divinity core inside his soul and released divine might, the lingering pressure of the swamp god itself. Shut up, 2 words. To anyone else in this room it sounded ordinary, but to the lizard folk it was thunder. It was their god looking down at them, the deepest fear written into their very nature. These creatures had endured torture, starvation, and soul-tearing pain from the slave rings without breaking. But this was different. This wasn't pain, it was origin. The pressure came from the source of what they were. They'd been captured recently, starved, beaten, locked in cages where they could die any moment. Their bodies were fierce, but their souls were already worn thin. Within seconds, every one of them stopped thrashing. Their ferocity melted into trembling submission. They bowed their heads and went completely silent. He felt his mental power spread outward, pressing a mark into each of their souls. The moment the marks took hold, he could sense the change. Their hostility dissolved into obedience and something even stronger, worship. From now on, these 200 swamp warriors were his. Macon stood behind him, frozen. He swallowed hard. These were the same creatures that had resisted every form of torture his people could devise. The same monsters that would rather have their heads explode than obey. And he'd silence them with 2 words. He spoke calmly to the lizard folk. Cooperate with the transport. He will take you back to the wilderness. The last traces of restlessness vanished. Macon snapped out of his daze and scrambled to give orders. 2 squads of level 9 armored knights arrived to escort the lizard folk. Even these elite fighters looked uneasy about handling swamp creatures known for their savagery. But today was different. The lizard folk did not resist. When Macon nervously asked if we could remove the shackles to make transport easier, he said yes. He tested it on a few, and they just stood there calm and obedient, as if the madness and violence of the past week had never happened. Macon looked at him with something close to awe. He did not understand how he'd done it. He did not need to. All that mattered was that his first army was ready, and we were heading to the Rose House. After the lizard folk were taken away, Macon told him he was welcome back any time. The Dragonfang Guild would give him their best prices. He thanked him and took the carriage he arranged back to the Rose House. Jasmine was waiting at the door when he arrived. She told him Felina's supplies had been placed in the side courtyard, though the 100 craftsmen wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. Just as we were talking, the transport carriage pulled up and the lizard folk climbed out. 200 swamp warriors covered in gray-green scales muscles, bulging amber eyes cold and sharp. The guards at the door shivered just looking at them. He tipped the escort leader about 10 silver coins for his trouble, and he left happy. Jasmine asked if he'd bought them as guards. He smiled and said yes, though in his mind they were much more than that. They were the foundation of his entire expansion. She asked when he planned to leave for his territory. Every frontier lord gets 1 month to prepare, with a possible extension up to 3 months. After that, imperial law treats you as a deserter. He told her he'd decide tomorrow, but would leave within half a month. She nodded and led him and the lizard folk to the side courtyard where the supplies were stored. The yard was huge, bigger than many small noble estates. Horses grazed near the wagons, and on the ground sat a small mountain of armor gleaming with cold metallic light. He checked the armor with his status panel. 1-star quality, made from refined steel, with dwarven techniques designed to fit most humanoid beings under 2 meters tall. Each set came with a sharp steel sword. 200 sets total, he gave the order. Everyone put on the armor. The lizard folk moved immediately, helping each other strap on the pieces. At about 1m70, they fit the armor perfectly. The black steel made them look even more terrifying. Amber eyes glowing above dark metal, sharp swords in their clawed hands, thick tails poking through specially made openings in the back. With their natural scale defense plus the armor on top, their fighting power had jumped to a completely new level. 200 fully armed level 6 junior knights stood before him in formation. 2 days ago, he was starving in a 10-square-meter room in the 9th district, eating black bread harder than rock. Now he had divine power, an army, 30 wagons of supplies, and 1,000 gold coins. The future felt real for the first time. Jasmine excused herself. She had duties to attend to. He offered her a tip like he had the escorts, but she politely refused. As the princess's personal attendant, she did not need the money. Later, back at the Rose Estate, Jasmine reported everything to Felina. She mentioned the lizard folk and how strangely obedient they were. Creatures famous for their savage fury, acting like tamed kittens around him. Felina wasn't surprised. She simply smiled and said it made sense. Jasmine asked if that did not strike her as strange. But Felina had already figured out what most people had not. That a man who could walk out of the slums, look a princess in the eye without flinching, and call her a friend, to her face was never going to be ordinary. She looked out her window at the blue sky, her thoughts hidden behind those gem-like eyes, and said nothing more. After Jasmine left, he asked the lizard folk who their leader was. They all looked at one taller and stronger than the rest by half a head. He stepped forward, knelt on one knee, and spoke in rough but understandable common language. Master Haggis sends you his highest regards. He told him to keep everyone in line while we stayed in the city a few more days. He obeyed without question. Every word he spoke was law to them. Now he checked all 200 lizard folk, hoping to find a hero unit among them. In this world, there's a rare chance during leveling up to undergo a hero transformation awakening, a special talent that multiplies combat power several times over, but the odds are about 1 in 50,000 and none of his lizard folk had it. A small disappointment. He called the Rose House staff to bring good food for the lizard folk and went back to his room alone. Standing by the window, he watched the sunset and took stock of everything. In just a few days, he'd chosen his territory. The muddy swamp with its hidden fragment of divine authority. He'd bought 200 level 6 warriors for 1,000 gold coins. He'd built a real connection with Felina Lauren. He had over 70 gold coins left, 30 wagons of supplies, 200 sets of armor, and the swamp divinity core merged with his soul. Not bad for someone who was eating rock-hard black bread in a slum 3 days ago. That night he waited for midnight. The dwarf clock towers rang 12 times across the city. July 10th, the intelligence system was ready to refresh. He gave the command instantly. 5 new pieces of information appeared. The first was 1 star. A town would be attacked by harpies tomorrow. Too far away and not his problem. The second was also 1 star, but interesting. It was about Felina's past. As a child, her carriage was robbed by bandits. She hid in rose bushes and survived. And that experience awakened her special talent, the Rose Lord. That explained why everything around her involved roses, her estate, her inn, even her magic. The third was 2 star and made him excited. At the black market stall 24, the one-armed old man's stall right next to where he'd bought the divine fragment. One of his stones hid an ancient beast crystal core. Most of its energy was drained, but it was still powerful. If he fed it to Haggis, his strongest lizard man, it could trigger a bloodline evolution. No other lizard man could survive the transformation. Just when he'd been wishing for a hero unit, the system delivered exactly what he needed. The fourth was also 2 star. In the Slave Market District 5, Shop 19, a guild called Grey Mist was selling what they thought was ordinary dried earth dragon, but it was actually from a real adult dragon. The aura had just faded with time. Soaking it in blood would restore the dragon's scent. Carrying it through the wilderness would keep dangerous creatures away, making the long journey to the muddy swamp far safer. For a trip of over 1,000 kilometers through hostile territory, this was priceless. The fifth piece was 3 star and the most urgent. In 20 days, a riot would break out 500 kilometers into the wilderness. Wild races fighting over a shattered relic. If he did not leave for his territory before July 15th, the chaos would block his path and delay him by 7 months. And the fragment of swamp authority hidden in his territory would revive within half a year. If he missed it, someone or something else would claim it first. He had to move fast. 5 days to prepare, then leave. No golden 6-star secrets. But the intelligence was exactly what he needed. Lurels narrowed his eyes and began arranging every step. The ancient beast crystal core came first. Without a hero unit, his army lacked a true spearhead. He returned to the black market, found the one-armed merchant, and began examining the colorful stones without revealing his purpose. The old man watched him like a hawk. Lurels lifted 1 stone, dropped it, picked up another, and complained about prices until the merchant's patience thinned. The stone he truly wanted looked no different from a river rock. The merchant boasted that it contained rare silver and demanded 50 gold coins. Lurels tossed it aside and turned to leave. The price fell to 30 gold, then 20. Lurels opened his palm and showed 10 silver coins without saying a word. The merchant stared at the money, groaned as if facing death, then snatched the coins and shoved the stone into Lurels' hand. He believed he had cheated a fool. Lurels walked away with the key to creating his first hero unit. The intelligence system had once again turned trash into a treasure no one else could recognize. His second target was the dried earth dragon material at the Grey Mist shop. The seller treated it like faded junk because its aura had disappeared. Lurels knew blood would awaken the scent of a true adult dragon. That scent could make weaker wilderness creatures flee before his convoy ever saw them. He secured both treasures for barely 30 silver coins. Quietly using information to build wealth felt more dangerous than gambling because Lurels already knew which cards would win. Back at the Rose House, Jasmine was waiting for him. The 100 craftsmen Felina had promised had finally arrived. They stood in the courtyard like frightened statues while the armored lizard folk watched nearby. These craftsmen were swamp dwellers naturally suited to damp land and gifted at construction. Their racial talent, craftsman's heart, increased creativity and skill when building. Their weakness was an almost painful level of timidity. Felina had brought them from another city, specifically for Lurels. He understood immediately how valuable that choice was for the muddy swamp. Soldiers could conquer a location, but craftsmen were the ones who turned mud and reeds into a home. His territory needed both. Lurels called Haggis forward and showed him the ancient beast crystal core. The lizard leader did not know what the dull stone contained. The system had warned that only Haggis could survive the transformation. Lurels ordered him to swallow it. Haggis obeyed without hesitation. The moment the crystal entered his body, his muscles locked and his scales trembled. A violent power spread through his blood. Haggis collapsed claws, digging grooves into the ground as his entire body began changing. His height increased from 1.7 meters to nearly 1.85 meters. The armor around his growing frame pulled tight. Even while trembling on the ground, his presence became fiercer. The other lizard folk watched in silence, sensing that something ancient was waking in their leader. An hour passed before Haggis finally opened his eyes. He stood slowly, and the difference was impossible to hide. Solid muscle pressed against his dwarven armor. 10-centimeter claws gleamed like daggers, and his amber eyes carried a brutal pressure. Haggis stepped forward and knelt before Lurels. He promised to become his lord's weapon and cut through every obstacle. The lizard warrior had advanced from level 6 to level 7. More importantly, his potential had risen from 1 star to 2 stars. He had become a hero unit. His new talent was regeneration. When injured, Haggis could burn energy and vitality to recover. Even severed limbs could grow back. For a creature already fearless of pain, that ability changed everything. Haggis was built to keep fighting after ordinary warriors should have fallen. His scales now reduced damage even further. Ferocity increased all attributes when he attacked or suffered wounds. Blood rage expanded his body and raised his strength after he tasted blood. Every ability pushed him toward the same purpose: killing. Lurels stared at the status panel and felt genuine satisfaction. Haggis was his first hero. One warrior like him could decide battles that hundreds of ordinary troops could not. The system had answered one weakness, but time continued moving. The warning about the wilderness riot still demanded that Lurels leave before July 15th. He organized the convoy with ruthless efficiency. 30 wagons carried food, tools, weapons, and materials. 200 armored swamp lizard folk formed the combat force. 100 swamp dwellers would build the settlement. The dried dragon material was divided into portions. Once soaked in blood, its restored aura would shield the convoy from many predators. Lurels also carried the swamp mud insect Felina had given him. The chubby gray creature still looked harmless, yet he remembered the legend that a mature one could prey on dragons. In his hands, anything connected to the swamp deserved attention. The day of departure arrived. Lawrence City's walls stood behind the convoy, while the open road stretched ahead. For most frontier lords, leaving the safe zone was the moment fear became real. Lurels felt the same pressure, but he also felt anticipation. 3 days earlier, he had possessed 3 silver coins and a starving body. Now 200 armed warriors marched under his command. That change was not luck alone. Every piece of intelligence had been turned into a decision, and every decision had created another advantage. Lurels ordered the convoy forward. The golden iris crest of his fallen family moved toward the wilderness again. Outside Lawrence City, vast farmland covered the land. Green wheat rolled under the wind until the city slowly disappeared behind them. The magical races of this world were stronger than ordinary humans from Earth. Even the timid swamp dwellers could travel long distances without collapsing. By noon, the convoy had already covered roughly 30 kilometers. They rested at a roadside well washed and continued. Naya rice reduced the need to cook for several days, saving time and fuel. Every small advantage mattered on a journey of more than 1,000 kilometers. The lands around Lawrence City remained protected by patrols. Wide blue stone roads allowed the wagons to move quickly. By sunset, they had traveled another 40 kilometers. 70 kilometers in one day forced Lurels to revise his understanding of this world's physical limits. Night remained dangerous, so the convoy stopped near a small town. Lurels placed guards and let the others rest. The next days followed a steady rhythm of marching, scouting, and camping. The safe zone gradually thinned. At midnight, the intelligence system prepared another refresh. Lurels opened it immediately. The first report warned that Earth gnomes would attack the convoy. 3 small groups, none above level 5. That danger earned only 1 star. To the current army, it was more an inconvenience than a disaster. The second report revealed that the chief officer of a nearby lord's estate had once fought beside Lurels' father. The original body's memories had never contained that detail. Lurels silently remembered the connection. When he returned to Lawrence City, an old comrade of Baronel's might become valuable. The third intelligence concerned Felina. She had successfully advanced to level 17. At only 24, she remained the youngest Grand Mage in the Griffin Empire. Her next opportunity for advancement was tied to gathering special rose flowers. Laurels decided to remember every unusual rose he encountered in the wilderness. A connection to Felina was worth far more than a few bags of gold. The fourth warning predicted man-eating crows on the 17th. Their presence would attract level 13 storm birds. The solution was strangely simple. Triple the amount of dragon scent at the correct time, and the crows would avoid the convoy. The fifth intelligence warned about barbarian blood thieves near marsh reeds on the evening of the 19th. Laurels needed to hide the dragon scent and rest for 3 hours. 5 reports, none legendary, yet 3 of them could save lives. That was the terrifying value of information. A monster did not need to be defeated if Laurels knew exactly when to avoid its path. After reviewing the reports twice, his tension eased. For the first time since leaving the city, he slept deeply. The next morning, a lizard guard woke him. The convoy packed and resumed its march. By noon, they reached a broad red leaf forest. Bright crimson leaves drifted on the wind like sparks. The scene looked peaceful. Laurel's expression sharpened. He smelled goblins. Haggis immediately ordered the warriors into battle formation. The swamp lizard folk became visibly excited. They obeyed Laurels like tame creatures, but their true nature had never disappeared. They were predators. Battle was where their blood felt most alive. Hidden figures moved among the red leaf trees. Earth gnomes emerged from the undergrowth and attempted to surround the convoy. Their numbers matched the intelligence report. Their strongest members were only level 5. Haggis charged before the enemy could close the formation. His first collision smashed through the gnomes like a beast tearing into dry branches. The other lizard folk followed. Steel blades flashed among the red leaves. The earth gnomes fought fiercely, but the difference in equipment was cruel. Bone weapons struck refined armor and failed to pierce. Lizard claws tore through unprotected bodies. The ambush turned into a slaughter. Laurels watched from the center of the formation. This was the first real wilderness battle for his new force. The result confirmed what he already suspected. 200 level 6 swamp warriors in proper armor were far stronger than their purchase price suggested. Haggis was on another level entirely. Ferocity and blood rage transformed him as soon as blood covered his claws. His muscles expanded. Every strike sent an enemy flying. The earth gnomes finally broke and tried to escape. The lizard folk hunted them through the forest. The battle ended quickly. Laurels felt relief rather than excitement. A weak enemy had still taught him something important. The wilderness would never announce whether the next ambush was 1-star or 6-star. Without the system, every patch of trees could hide death. With it, Laurels could prepare before danger even showed its face. Haggis and his warriors cleaned the battlefield. The earth gnomes possessed almost nothing worth taking. They were poor creatures, struggling to survive in the same wilderness. Laurels ordered the army to regroup and move on. 2 small lizard teams scouted ahead. The main convoy followed at a safe distance. The restored dragon scent spread from the wagons. Most wild creatures sensed the pressure of an adult dragon and kept away. Without that protection, the journey would have been a chain of endless battles. Laurels understood why the 2-star intelligence had been called priceless. On July 17th, the system's warning became relevant. At dawn, Laurels soaked 3 portions of dragon material. By noon, he increased it to 4. The aura rolling from the convoy became so heavy that even the swamp dwellers trembled. They knew the dragon was not real. Their instincts did not care. High above, a flock of man-eating crows appeared. The dark birds circled once. Then the dragon pressure reached them. The flock changed direction and vanished across the sky. The level 13 storm birds never came. A disaster that could have destroyed the convoy passed without a single person realizing how close it had been. Bane, one of the swamp dwellers, watched Laurels more carefully after that. The Lord always seemed to change speed or direction before danger arrived. Sometimes Laurels ordered the convoy to hurry. Sometimes he stopped everyone in the middle of an ordinary road. Then distant roars, flying shadows, or traces of powerful creatures appeared where they would have been. To Bane, it looked almost supernatural. The swamp dweller began wondering whether his lord could sense the future. The thought was wild, but each safe escape made it harder to dismiss. On the evening of July 19th, Laurels ordered every trace of dragon scent hidden. The convoy moved into dense reeds and rested. No one understood why. 3 hours later, barbarian blood thieves passed through the area. Had the dragon scent remained exposed, the bandits might have investigated the unnatural aura. Instead, they continued without discovering the convoy. Laurels waited until the danger had passed, then restored the protection and moved again. The army's faith in him deepened. The wilderness stretched endlessly. Forests became wetlands, rocky paths became muddy tracks, and every day carried the weight of distance. For Bane, the march sometimes became painfully repetitive. Travel, scout, camp, repeat. Yet the repetition itself was proof that Laurel's preparations worked. A boring day in the wilderness was a victory. More than half a month passed. The convoy crossed hundreds of kilometers without suffering a fatal loss. The swamp dwellers began following Laurels with almost fanatical confidence. The lizard folk already worshipped him because of the divine mark. Now even those without such marks believed their lord was blessed. In Noah, world following the strong was an instinct. In the wilderness, that instinct became law. Laurel's status rose with every danger avoided and every correct path chosen. On August 4th at noon, the convoy stopped. They had traveled for 22 days since leaving Lawrence City. Laurels opened the magical map. The six-pointed marker of the muddy swamp was only 30 kilometers away. His heartbeat quickened. For weeks, the territory had existed only as a point on a map and a secret in the intelligence system. Now it was within reach. Clearing land, building a city, gathering power, everything would begin there. Laurels ordered the convoy to accelerate. He wanted to reach the territory before sunset. Morale exploded. Even the exhausted swamp dwellers pushed the wagons faster. The sun sank slowly while heat still clung to the land. Then a cool breeze flowed from ahead. Laurels raised his head. A curved rainbow stretched across the distance. Steam rose beneath the colors. The map marker and the six-pointed territory symbol finally merged. Muddy swamp, they had arrived. The swamp dwellers danced with joy. The lizard folk stared toward the wetlands with visible hunger. After more than 2 weeks of dangerous travel and more than 1,000 kilometers, they had reached the place that would become their home. Laurels felt every emotion he had suppressed during the march rise at once. This was his land, the place where his real power could finally take root. Then the swamp divinity core inside his magic seed began glowing. Laurels instinctively turned toward the deeper wetlands. Something inside the swamp was calling him. The fragment of divine authority was real, yet the territory was not empty. The intelligence system revealed dangerous life spread throughout the wetlands. One report described thousands of curd ratmen. Another warned about a powerful two-legged flying dragon. The deepest threat was a population of decayed half-humans. Nearly 500 of them occupied an important region. Their levels reached 10. Every one of them stood at the strength of a mid-level knight. Haggis was only level 7. Hero unit or not, he could not defeat 500 level 10 monsters alone. Laurels felt the pressure immediately. The muddy swamp had welcomed its new lord by showing him exactly how weak his current army still was. Then he read the final intelligence. Beneath the decayed half-humans grew blue heart mud fruit. The magical plant could serve as staple food. Half a kilogram could feed even a strong orc warrior for an entire day. It matured in only 2 months. Its greatest limitation was that it required wet land. For most nobles, that made large-scale farming difficult. For the ruler of the muddy swamp, it was almost perfect. Food determined whether a territory could grow. Without reliable grain, soldiers, craftsmen, and future residents would all become burdens. The blue heart mud fruit could solve that problem. The system rated it 3 stars because its value was strategic, not merely profitable. Laurels wanted it. To obtain it, he first had to survive the swamp's current rulers. Before challenging the decayed half-humans, he needed to understand the nearby terrain. He sent scouts forward. The first major danger emerged from shallow water and overgrown mud. Curd ratmen. The creatures were small, barely above 1 meter. Their bodies looked weak. Their teeth were the problem. Those jaws could dent 1-star armor and bite through lizard scales. Worse, the ratmen attacked without fear. 4 squads became 7, then more poured from a hill. A sea of bodies formed in the swamp. Individual weakness disappeared beneath overwhelming numbers. The first ratman slammed into the lizard formation, teeth closed around armored arms and legs. Swamp warriors cut heads off, but some severed rat heads remained clamped to flesh. Their jaws tightened even after death. Lizard folk roared as wounds opened beneath their armor. Ferocity awakened. Amber eyes turned scarlet. The warriors charged into the living tide. Haggis tore through the front ranks. Blood covered him, activating his strongest combat traits. His body expanded. Strength surged through his limbs. Ratmen flew apart beneath his claws, yet more replaced them. Lurls watched the numbers keep increasing. The swamp had turned quantity into a weapon. His divine residual pressure could control frightened swamp creatures. These ratmen were already lost in frenzy. Their minds had no room for fear. Lurls could not command them. His gaze hardened. If they could not be controlled, they would be destroyed. He released magic. Pale blue energy crossed the battlefield and entered several severely wounded lizard warriors. Swamp Blessing covered a 3 by 3 meter area. Life Force accelerated healing and restored up to 20% of health. The effect was even stronger on swamp races. Torn flesh began closing before Lurl's eyes. Warriors who should have fallen stood again. Their ferocity returned with fresh strength. The battle became a meat grinder. Steel blades struck bone. Claws ripped through bodies. Rat teeth crushed armor. Mud marsh water and blood mixed beneath their feet. The smell became almost unbearable. No one had time to feel disgust. The battlefield reduced every thought to one command: kill. Haggis became the center of the slaughter. Crimson energy burned around his enlarged body. Regeneration repaired wounds while blood rage increased his strength. The more he was hurt, the harder he fought. The more blood he tasted, the more terrifying he became. Lurls continued casting Swamp Blessing. His magic was not built for direct destruction, but healing fearless warriors was its own form of violence. Every restored lizard returned to the fight like a blade sharpened again. Ratmen died by the hundreds. Still, the hill continued releasing more. Lurls realized this was not a random patrol. They had disturbed a massive population. The lizard folk held formation. Their armor gave them the defense needed to survive repeated bites. Without Felina's 200 armor sets, the same battle would have left dozens dead. Her gift was saving lives hundreds of kilometers away from Lawrence City. The Ratmen finally began losing momentum. Their bodies piled so high that new attackers had to climb over the dead. Haggis roared and broke through another cluster. The lizard folk followed their hero. Fear finally entered the enemy. Some Ratmen turned toward the reeds. Lurls had prepared for that possibility. Teams blocked escape routes and forced the surviving creatures back into the killing zone. The final resistance collapsed. The swamp fell silent except for wounded warriors breathing heavily. More than 3,000 Ratmen corpses covered the ground. Lurls had never seen death on that scale before. Months ago, the sight might have broken him. Even the exploding slave rings in Lawrence City had made his heart race. Now he remained calm. The wilderness had been teaching him quickly. In this world, weakness did not receive sympathy. It received teeth, claws, and graves. The lizard folk gathered the Ratman bodies into a massive pile. Lurls reached toward the broken divine shard within his soul. Pale blue flames spread across the corpses. Red life essence rose from the dead. The energy flowed toward his warriors and his own divine power. The bodies crumbled into residue. A progress bar on Lurl's panel moved. He was approaching the limit of his current potential. The discovery changed how he viewed battle. Stronger enemies contained richer life essence. Every future hunt could become fuel for evolution. The swamp was dangerous, but its danger itself could feed his growth. During the aftermath, Lurls captured information about the local threats. The decayed half-humans remained the greatest obstacle. They possessed numbers, level advantage, and territory familiarity. Attacking them immediately would be reckless. Lurls needed more strength. The swamp, however, soon revealed another opportunity. A powerful two-legged flying dragon moved through the region. Its bloodline was pure, and its level likely exceeded 15. The creature's aura rivaled a mature dragon. Wherever it traveled, lesser swamp creatures fled or hid. Bane explained the effect. For half a day after the flying dragon passed, nearby paths would become unnaturally empty. Then the creatures would slowly return. Lurls understood the opportunity. They could use the dragon's fear aura as a temporary road. His army did not need to defeat the beast. They only needed to move through the silence it created. Once again, timing mattered more than brute force. Bane admitted his people had once possessed a young two-legged flying dragon. They had tried to raise it. The resources required were too great. His clan had been forced to give it up. Bitterness remained in Bane's eyes. Having a treasure without the strength to support it was another kind of poverty. Laurels understood that feeling better than Bane realized. The Els family had once possessed a noble title and lost everything because no one could claim it in time. Power that could not be protected always became someone else's possession. Laurels had no intention of repeating that lesson. Scouts reported the path ahead was clear. Laurels ordered the convoy to accelerate before the flying dragon's pressure faded. Muddy trails twisted through reeds, shallow water, and dense vegetation. Forks appeared constantly, yet Laurels kept choosing the correct route. The intelligence and magical map guided him without visible hesitation. Bane watched from behind. His belief became almost religious. To the swamp dweller, Laurels looked like a chosen ruler blessed by the gods. He did not know how close that guess actually was. The sun moved west. After crossing another muddy grass path, the view opened. A broad, low grassland stretched across the wetlands. Sparse trees stood in the center. Water and mud flowed slowly beneath grass nearly a meter high. The scene felt strangely peaceful after weeks of danger. The convoy erupted in excitement. After more than 20 days and over 1,000 kilometers, they had reached the future home of the territory. Bane approached Laurels carefully. He pointed toward more than 10 tall trees. They were not ordinary trees, they were swamp tree people. The trunks were gray and rough, covered in moss. Dense canopies swayed in the breeze. At first glance, nothing looked unusual. Laurels focused more carefully. The trees were alive. Powerful life signatures slept inside them. 12 tree people stood in the center of the land Laurels wanted to build on. Fighting them could destroy resources and cost warriors. Laurels chose another method. He released the pressure of the swamp god. Divine might rolled across the grassland. The air itself seemed heavier. The tree people reacted immediately. Branches shook. Ancient trunks twisted, hidden faces emerged from bark. To ordinary creatures, Laurels looked like a young frontier lord. To swamp life, the power inside him carried the origin of their existence. The tree people felt that authority. Resistance disappeared. Massive bodies lowered. The 12 living trees bowed. Laurels extended his mental energy. Divine marks entered their souls without a struggle. The tree people became loyal. 12 dangerous obstacles transformed into 12 living guardians. Hagos trembled with emotion. Bane looked ready to worship on the spot. Their lord had conquered powerful swamp creatures without drawing a sword. To them, it was proof of absolute authority. Laurels ignored the growing awe. A territory could not be built with admiration alone. He ordered every wagon moved into the grassland. This would become the settlement center. Bane received responsibility for surveying the terrain and planning future structures. At last, the timid craftsman hero could show his real value. Then Bane asked a simple question. What would the territory be called? Laurels considered the fallen family name the frontier and the road that had carried them here. He gave the settlement a name, City of the First Dawn. The words spread through the gathered swamp dwellers. For people who had crossed the wilderness following a man they barely understood, the name carried weight. Dawn meant something beginning after darkness. Construction started immediately. Swamp dwellers measured ground, examined water flow, and organized materials. The tree people took positions around the settlement. Their roots and branches formed natural watch points. The lizard folk established a defensive perimeter. Hagos led patrols through the nearby wetlands. Laurels finally stood in the center of his own territory. There were no stone walls, towers, or palaces. There was mud, grass, wagons, tired workers, and a handful of creatures who trusted him with their lives. To Laurels, it was more beautiful than the Rose Estate. Lawrence City had been built by someone else's ancestors. This empty wetland would become proof of his own existence. Yet the system refused to let him become comfortable. The fragment of swamp authority still waited somewhere deeper. The decayed half-humans still guarded strategic land. Food remained limited. The settlement had no permanent defenses. One powerful enemy could erase everything. Laurels reviewed the status of his forces. Hagos was the strongest direct fighter. 200 lizard folk formed the army. The swamp dwellers handled construction. 12 tree people guarded the settlement. Laurels himself had healing and divine control. It was a foundation. It was not yet enough. Exploration became the next priority. Laurels sent Hagos and scouts into nearby areas. Every pool of water, reed field, and mud channel could hide creatures. The swamp looked open, but visibility was deceptive. Scouts moved through terrain that would trap ordinary humans. Their natural amphibious bodies made them ideal. Lurals traveled with a combat group to investigate resources. The territory needed food materials and knowledge of nearby populations. A reed field rustled ahead. The lizard folk immediately showed hostility. Harsh curses came from the vegetation. Ugly figures emerged. They stood around 1.5 meters tall, with fish-like faces and dead white eyes. Slimy mucus covered their bodies. The smell of fish rolled through the reeds. Bone spears rested in their hands. The status panel identified them as half-fish creatures. Level 5. Their one-star racial talent covered their bodies in mucus that reduced magic damage by 20%. Their weapons also carried sticky slime. A successful spear strike could slow an enemy. In wetlands, their movement speed increased by 30%. More than 4 squads appeared. They gathered around Lural's force with open hostility. Lurals examined their levels and felt no fear. 1-star potential level 5. These creatures had chosen the wrong group to ambush. He gave a single order. Kill! Haggis charged first. He tore through 7 or 8 half-fish creatures in the opening collision. Blood covered his body. Ferocity activated. Every attribute rose. Blood rage followed. Haggis grew larger and stronger. All of his abilities had been created for direct slaughter. The half-fish formation broke where he entered. Ordinary lizard folk attacked behind him. Their steel equipment created an overwhelming advantage. One half-fish creature dodged a sword and thrust a bone spear into a lizard warrior's stomach. The spear snapped. It left only a white mark on the armor. The lizard warrior snarled. His claws pierced the attacker's chest and came out through its back. One violent movement tore the creature apart. Across the battlefield, the same difference repeated. Bone weapons could not reliably penetrate refined armor. Steel blades cut flesh with ease. Half-fish numbers fell rapidly. The creatures fought fiercely at first. Soon, fewer than 3 small teams remained. Fear finally broke through their aggression. They dropped weapons and tried to flee. Lurals had already sent teams around the reeds. Escape routes were blocked. The lizard folk began the final cleanup. Steel blades rose and fell. Flesh split. Bones broke. Blood stained the grass. Every half-fish creature from the 4 squads was killed. More than 30 lizard warriors suffered injuries. None were seriously wounded. Lurals had originally considered capturing survivors. The lizard folk left no one breathing. Their battle instinct remained too fierce. He did not punish them. The victory proved the army's current strength. Level 5 swamp creatures could not challenge 200 armored level 6 warriors. Lurals ordered the bodies gathered. The lizard folk became excited. They already understood what happened when their lord stood before a pile of corpses. Life essence was about to become strength. The dead were stacked together. Lurals raised his hand. Pale blue magic surrounded him. Red life energy rose from the broken half-fish bodies. The essence flowed toward nearby lizard folk. The corpses crumbled into residue. Lural's progress bar jumped from 50% to 70%. He moved another step toward breaking his potential limit. The result confirmed his earlier theory. Level 5 creatures provided richer life energy than level 3 ratmen. Higher levels meant denser essence. Future battles could accelerate evolution even faster. Haggis searched the area with his teams. They found no sign of the half-fish habitat. Lurals refused to waste time chasing an unknown settlement. He ordered the group forward. Beyond the reed field lay a waterweed zone. Long green tendrils drifted through the water. Pure white flowers floated on the surface. They swayed gently with the current. A breeze carried a fresh scent across the swamp. For a moment, the brutal battlefield behind them felt impossibly distant. Lurals allowed himself to relax slightly. The muddy swamp could be beautiful when it was not trying to kill him. Then a scout ahead cried out in surprise. Every lizard warrior reacted instantly. Swords lifted. Haggis moved to the front. Lural's calm vanished. The wilderness had taught him not to ignore unexpected sounds. His eyes followed the scout's direction. Another unknown detail of his new territory had revealed itself. The settlement behind them still depended on this exploration. Every resource they found could strengthen City of the First Dawn. Every creature they underestimated could become the force that destroyed it. Lurals carried both thoughts at once. He had already seen how quickly fate could change. 3 silver coins had become divine power. A pile of worthless saplings had opened the door to Felina. A scratched crystal had transformed his soul. 200 unwanted slaves had become an army. A river stone had created haggis. Every victory began with something other people had dismissed. That pattern was becoming the story of Lurels himself. Lawrence City had dismissed the fallen Els family. The frontier lords had treated the muddy swamp like a death sentence. Slave traders had called the lizard folk uncontrollable. Merchants had mistaken magical treasures for junk. Lurels did not possess overwhelming strength when he entered this world. He possessed the ability to recognize value before everyone else. The intelligence system gave him knowledge. His decisions turned that knowledge into power. The difference mattered. Information alone could have remained words on a blue panel. Lurels risked his survival money on the saplings. He trusted Felina with the grass location. He entered the black market for the divine fragment. He chose the deepest territory on the map. He placed himself before 200 berserk lizard folk and used divine might. Every step demanded action. The swamp now responded to those accumulated choices. Warriors obeyed. Tree people guarded. Craftsmen built. Life essence pushed him toward evolution. The fragment of authority called from somewhere deeper. Yet Lurels never forgot how small his territory remained compared with the wilderness. The magical map had shown the truth clearly. 200 or 300 green zones were scattered across an ocean of unexplored land. 1,000 years of effort had barely scratched the north. Countless frontier lords had died attempting what Lurels was doing. Their courage had not protected them from monsters. His system offered an advantage. It did not make him immortal. The Kurd Ratman had proven that numbers could overwhelm superior individuals. The decayed half-humans promised an even harder battle. The flying dragon's aura reminded him that beings above level 15 moved through this swamp. Felina could destroy half a city at level 17. Monsters of similar strength could erase City of the First Dawn before its first permanent building was complete. Lurels needed growth. Food came first. Blue heart mud fruit remained a strategic objective. Territory defenses came next. The tree people were useful, but 12 guardians could not cover an expanding settlement forever. More warriors would be needed. More hero units would be even better. Lurels also needed to improve his own level and potential. His current healing power made the army stronger, but he could not rely on haggis for every direct threat. The divine core at 10% remained incomplete. The hidden authority fragment was the true reason he had chosen this swamp. Claiming it could change the entire balance. Missing it could allow another being to take the power first. The intelligence system had warned that the authority would revive within half a year. Lurels treated that deadline as absolute. City walls could wait, a divine fragment could not. Still, reckless searching would be foolish. The muddy swamp covered a vast region filled with hostile races. Lurels continued mapping safe routes. Scouts reported water-depth terrain and signs of powerful life. Bane transformed those reports into construction plans. Raised paths would connect dry ground. Buildings needed foundations suited to moving water and soft mud. Storage areas required protection from moisture. The swamp dwellers worked with surprising creativity. Their timid personalities vanished when tools entered their hands. Craftsman's heart was not a combat talent. In a growing territory, it might be more valuable than a sword. Lurels watched frames rise from the grassland. For the first time, the settlement began looking intentional. The wagons were no longer a camp. Materials were being sorted. Patrol routes were established. Water sources were examined. The tree people stood around the perimeter like silent towers. Their leaves moved even when the air was still. Haggis treated security with brutal seriousness. Any unfamiliar scent brought armed lizard teams. The warriors had spent too long in slave cages. Freedom under Lurels had not made them gentle. It had given their violence a direction. They now fought for a ruler they worshipped and a land they could call home. The slave rings were no longer what controlled them. Divine marks had replaced forced obedience. That difference explained why Macon's torture had failed. Pain could only create hatred. Lurels' divine pressure touched something deeper in their nature. The swamp god's origin had transformed submission into worship. Whether that power was merciful was another question. Lurels did not spend time pretending the world was kind. He had awakened in a body that died from a simple fall because hunger had weakened it. The 9th District had taught him what powerlessness looked like. Children praised Felina because people like her represented protection. Nobles bowed because strength decided status. Frontier law threatened deserters with hanging. Slave rings exploded heads. Monsters slaughtered towns from underground. This world did not hide its cruelty. Laurels had chosen to survive within those rules. More than that, he intended to rise high enough to shape the rules around his own territory. City of the First Dawn would not survive on noble pride. It needed strength that enemies could understand. Haggis was one answer. The lizard hero's regeneration made him terrifying in close combat. During patrols, wounds that would disable ordinary knights became temporary setbacks. His vitality restored what battle destroyed. The other lizard folk watched him with admiration. A hero transformation was a dream among their kind. The chance was roughly 1 in 50,000. Haggis had received that dream because Laurels knew which stone to buy. Their loyalty deepened every time they remembered it. To them, Laurels did not simply command power. He created miracles. The system remained Laurels' hidden secret. Felina suspected he was extraordinary. Bane imagined divine blessing. Macon wondered about his relationship with the princess. None of them understood the blue intelligence panel. That secrecy protected Laurels. The system's greatest weapon was not merely accurate information. It was the fact that other people did not know how he obtained it. An enemy could guard a treasure if they knew Laurels wanted it. They could alter a route if they knew he predicted danger. They could feed him false information if they understood his source. So Laurels allowed people to invent explanations. Luck, courage, noble connections, divine blessing. He never corrected them. Meanwhile, the system continued measuring value in stars. 1-star information was often local and limited. 2-star intelligence created profit or avoided serious threats. 3-star reports affected the survival and development of the territory. 6-star intelligence had placed a god's power into his soul. Laurels understood the scale now. A future golden report could change more than his own life. It might shake the Griffin Empire. That possibility excited him. It also made him careful. The swamp divinity core radiated ancient pressure from the center of his magic seed. It remained broken. 10% was enough to awaken healing and divine might. A complete core might allow power he could not yet imagine. Yet authority was required to fill the core. The hidden swamp authority fragment remained the next divine step. Laurels felt its call after arriving. The sensation was faint but undeniable. Somewhere in the wetlands, an ancient power waited. The swamp itself seemed to recognize the fragment inside him. Each time Laurels focused, the broken blue sphere responded. It was like a heart trying to remember how to beat. The feeling reminded him of the moment his blood touched the crystal. Sacred energy had poured through his soul for hours. He had fallen asleep as an ordinary person. He had awakened a level 3 apprentice mage. The transformation had changed more than his attributes. Felina's presence no longer overwhelmed his mind. The noble hall's attention had not shaken him. Even the wilderness felt less impossible. Confidence, however, could become dangerous. Laurels repeatedly reminded himself that his potential remained only 2 stars. Without external opportunities, his natural ceiling was level 9. Felina's unreadable potential showed how large the gap could become. Haggis had required an ancient beast core to raise his own potential. Laurels would need similar chances. The intelligence system was his path to those chances. Every 5-day refresh became more important than sleep. He reviewed reports carefully, even when they appeared useless. The information about Felina's childhood had no immediate profit. Yet it explained Rose Lord, her magic, and her future advancement path. Knowledge of a powerful ally could become valuable later. The information about his father's former comrade also waited for the future. Laurels had learned not to discard a connection simply because he could not use it today. Jim had been the first person in this world to show him kindness. Felina had given supplies that now protected his people. Macon's honesty had warned him about the lizard folk's danger. Even the Tomb Raider's bamboo dragonfly had created a sincere moment with Felina. Power did not grow from treasures alone. Relationships changed the route of survival. Felina's gift of the swamp mud insect remained another mystery. The gray creature still spent its time eating leaves. Legends claimed it could prey on dragons when mature. Felina had failed to restore its ancient power with magical plants. Laurels believed the swamp divinity core might succeed. Returning the insect to true wetlands was the first step. He watched it carefully whenever he had time. No dramatic transformation occurred. The creature remained fat and harmless. Laurels did not force the process. The source material had already taught him that valuable things often looked useless. The muddy saplings had looked ordinary. The divine crystal had looked scratched and cloudy. The beast core had looked like a river stone. A chubby insect deserved patience. In City of the First Dawn, even overlooked life could hide impossible potential. The same principle guided Laurel's view of the swamp dwellers. Slave markets valued fighters more highly. An orc could cost 200 gold coins. The timid craftsman looked weak beside armored lizard folk. Yet without builders, the army would spend every season sleeping beside wagons. Territory growth required skills beyond killing. Bane's value increased with every survey. He understood wetland construction instinctively. Paths that looked stable to Laurel's could sink after heavy water flow. Bane noticed subtle ground patterns. He chose better foundations. He planned around the swamp rather than trying to force dry land designs onto it. Laurel's encouraged that expertise. A lord did not need to know everything if he knew who should handle each problem. Haggis led battle. Bane planned construction. Laurel's gathered intelligence and made decisions. The territory's first structure was not a building. It was a chain of responsibility. That chain had already survived more than 1,000 kilometers of wilderness. The journey itself became a shared memory. The convoy remembered the red leaf forest. They remembered dragon pressure making their bodies tremble. They remembered strange orders that saved them from unseen threats. They remembered the rainbow over the muddy swamp. Shared hardship turned separate slaves and warriors into something closer to a people. City of the First Dawn gave that group a name for its future. Laurel's understood the emotional value even if he rarely spoke about it. The original Laurel's had died before beginning his frontier dream. The reincarnated Laurel's had inherited that unfinished path. He did not possess the original boy's memories as his own emotions. Still, the golden iris robe carried the weight of a fallen family. Baron Els had died from an old wound 10 years earlier. The title vanished because no heir could claim it before the legal deadline. The family collapsed. A noble descendant ended in the 9th district. Now that same crest had crossed farther into the wilderness than almost any frontier lord in history. The irony was not lost on Laurel's. Nobles in the selection hall had laughed in disbelief when he chose the muddy swamp. Felina herself had warned him. If no one had done it, Laurel said he would be the first. Those words had earned respect. But words were easy inside a safe hall. City of the First Dawn was where he had to prove them. The swamp did not care about noble courage. Kurd ratmen had attacked because he entered their territory. Half-fish creatures had ambushed because they saw prey. The decayed half-humans would not retreat because Laurel's carried a title. Only preparation and strength could turn his claim into reality. Laurel's welcomed that truth. He had never expected an easy life after reincarnation. His first meal had been black bread even dogs might reject. His first legal reward had been a journey into a wilderness famous for killing frontier lords. Then the system appeared. It did not hand him a castle. It told him where opportunities existed. Laurel still had to buy bargain travel risk and fight. That made each gain feel earned. The 100 gold coins from Felina had seemed like a fortune. He spent 20 on relics and later used 1,000 she supplied to buy an army. Money flowed quickly because territory building consumed resources at a terrifying rate. Armor alone had been worth 4,000 gold coins. 30 wagons of supplies looked enormous in Lawrence City. In the muddy swamp, they looked temporary. Food would disappear. Metal would wear. Tools would break. More residents would need more of everything. That was why Blue Heart Mud Fruit mattered. Strategic resources could support growth without constant dependence on Lawrence City. The distance made dependence dangerous. A round trip stretched across more than 2,000 kilometers. Without intelligence and dragon scent, the first journey alone might have destroyed the convoy. Laurel's needed local production. The decayed half-humans stood between him and that goal. Their 500 level 10 bodies represented a military wall. Laurel's refused to charge that wall blindly. He continued absorbing life essence from weaker threats. His progress had reached 70% after the half-fish battle. Another 30% could break his current potential barrier. Evolution might raise his star rating. A higher potential ceiling would matter more than a temporary level gain. That made hunting increasingly attractive. The swamp contained endless hostile life. Yet every battle risked soldiers. Lurls could not treat loyal warriors as disposable fuel. Swamp Blessing reduced that risk. His healing ability restored wounded fighters before injuries became deaths. The Kurd-Ratman battle had shown the perfect combination. Lizard folk fought without fear. Lurls repaired them. Haggis broke enemy centers. Armor absorbed lethal hits. The army's parts strengthened one another. Future enemies would be smarter. Level 10 decayed half-humans might possess skills that ignored armor. Large wild races could use formations or magic. The flying dragon could overwhelm the entire army through raw level difference. Lurls studied every status panel the system revealed. Knowing talents before combat allowed him to identify threats. Felina's panel had shown the feature's limit. Her potential remained question marks because the gap was too large. Lurls accepted that limitation. Even partial knowledge was better than fighting blind. The half-fish mucus reduced magic damage by 20%. That information would matter greatly to a mage who relied on attacks. Lurls relied on warriors instead. Their steel blades ignored the mucus advantage. The enemy's wetland speed also failed because Lurls blocked escape routes early. Understanding an ability allowed him to remove its value. That was how Lurls preferred to fight. He did not need a dramatic duel if positioning could decide the result first. The same thinking had guided his black market purchase. He did not snatch the crystal and reveal desperation. He browsed for 10 minutes. He asked about bowls and cups. He placed items back. He bargained. The Tomb Raiders left satisfied because they never understood what they had sold. A clean victory was one where the enemy realized the truth too late. The stall owner who sold lava fruit saplings had even insulted him while handing over a fortune. Lurls remembered that moment with amusement. Those early transactions had changed his view of the system. 6-star information could reveal divine power. 2-star information could create the money needed to obtain it. Small opportunities built the path to larger ones. Ignoring low-star intelligence completely would be a mistake. The report about Durr's bribe had been useless only because Lurls lacked the status to act. In the future as a territory lord, similar political intelligence might become powerful. His position was changing. The fallen noble from the 9th District already had a personal connection with Princess Felina. Merchants changed their attitude when they saw her rose-marked coin bag. Frontier lords had stared after she greeted him as an equal companion. Those reactions showed how reputation could create power before a sword was drawn. Lurls did not worship status. He understood its utility. Felina herself fascinated him for another reason. She possessed overwhelming talent but still honored her promises. She could have taken the blue crystal grass location without paying. Lurls had openly told her the cost of breaking her word might be higher than she could afford. Instead of becoming angry, she became curious. Their friendship grew from that strange exchange. She later gave supplies worth thousands of gold coins. Lurls gave her a crooked bamboo dragonfly. Jasmine had looked horrified. Felina called it the first special present someone had given her. The difference revealed something about the princess. Surrounded by people desperate to impress her, a childish handmade toy felt more sincere than jewels. Lurls had not planned that emotional value. Sometimes intelligence could not predict everything. Human reactions remained their own kind of mystery. He accepted that. Felina's final blessing before he left remained in his memory. Come back alive from the wilderness. Lurls intended to keep that promise. Returning alive, however, was no longer his only ambition. He wanted to return as the ruler of a functioning territory. He wanted the golden iris crest to mean something again. Perhaps one day the nobles who barely noticed the Els family would know City of the First Dawn. For now, those dreams were distant. The immediate world was waterweed reeds, patrol routes, and hidden enemies. Lurls kept his focus there. The surprise scout ahead had reminded him how quickly calm could end. White flowers could sway above water-hiding teeth. Haggis remained at the front body tense. The lizard hero's claws reflected light. The other warriors spread naturally. Their movement showed the experience earned from repeated battles. Weeks earlier, they had been prisoners fighting slave rings until their own heads exploded. Now they moved as organized soldiers. Lurls had not erased their savagery. He had given it discipline. That transformation might be one of his greatest achievements. Uncontrolled strength had made the lizard folk worthless to make in. Controlled loyalty turned the same creatures into the foundation of a frontier army. Value depended on who understood how to use it. The swamp tree people proved the same principle. 12 potential enemies now guarded the settlement because Lurels possessed divine authority. Bane and the craftsmen had been slaves too. Their building talent now shaped a city. Lurels saw a pattern in his territory. City of the First Dawn was being built by beings the wider world had underestimated, sold, or ignored. That made the settlement strangely suited to him. Its lord had also been dismissed as a starving fallen noble. No one in Lawrence City would have predicted this scene 3 days after his reincarnation. Even Lurels might have laughed at it. Yet the impossible had arrived one decision at a time. First came the frontier approval, then the blue panel, then the saplings, Felina, the divine crystal, the lizard folk, Hagus, the long road, the muddy swamp, each event connected to the next. Removing one choice could have destroyed the entire chain. Without the saplings and bluegrass information, Lurels would not have obtained Felina's money. Without the money, he could not have bought the divine fragment. Without the fragment, he could not control the lizard folk. Without the lizard army, the journey and swamp battles would have been impossible. The system showed opportunities, but Lurels' ability to connect them created momentum. That momentum now carried an entire settlement. He wondered briefly what the original Lurels would think. The boy had planned to become a frontier lord rather than starve in the slums. His weak body had failed before the journey began. The reincarnated soul had finished the first part of that dream. Lurels did not pretend this gave him ownership of the dead boy's hopes. Still, he carried the body title and family crest forward. City of the First Dawn became a continuation neither life could have created alone. One man had provided the unfinished path. Another brought the system and the will to exploit it. The result stood in the muddy swamp. A lord with divine power, 200 swamp warriors. A hero named Hagus, a builder named Bane. 12 living tree guardians, 100 craftsmen. A settlement rising from wet grass. It was small. Against the Griffin Empire, it was nothing. Against the endless wilderness, it was almost invisible. To Lurels, it was the first thing in his second life that was truly his. That made every muddy path worth protecting. The road ahead remained brutal. The hidden authority fragment had not been claimed. The blue heart mud fruit remained under enemy control. 500 level 10 decayed half-humans still occupied part of the swamp. Powerful monsters moved nearby. The territory had barely begun construction. Yet Lurels did not feel the helplessness of the 9th District anymore. Back then, 3 silver coins had represented 4 months of survival. Now his calculations involved armies, magical crops, divine fragments, and territory defense. The scale of his problems had grown with his power. Strangely, he preferred it. Hunger in the slums had offered no path forward. The swamp offered danger and opportunity together. Every threat could hide information, essence, resources, or future soldiers. Lurels had learned to look at the world that way. The half-fish creatures were enemies. Their corpses became life essence. The curd ratmen were a disaster. Their deaths pushed his progress higher. The tree people were obstacles. Divine might turn them into guards. The muddy swamp itself was considered a death trap. It contained divine authority and the exact environment his powers required. Other people saw danger first. Lurels searched for the value hidden behind it. That habit was becoming more powerful than any spell he knew. His direct magic remained limited. Touch of the wetlands and swamp blessing healed. Divine might intimidated and marked souls. Neither ability could destroy a city like Felina's war magic. Yet Lurels could create forces around himself. 200 warriors became harder to kill because he healed them. Swamp creatures could become loyal because he carried divine pressure. His strength multiplied through others. A territory lord did not need to be the sharpest sword if he could command an entire arsenal. Lurels was beginning to understand his own path. The swamp god's fragment had not turned him into a lone battle monster. It had made him a ruler suited to wetland life. Touch of the wetlands restored living things. Divine might established authority. The core responded to swamp creatures. Even the mud insect might awaken beneath its influence. Everything pointed toward the same identity. Lurels was not simply building a territory in the muddy swamp. The swamp was becoming the source of his power. That connection made the authority fragment even more important. When the core reacted on arrival, Lurels felt recognition. Something ancient inside the land had answered something ancient inside his soul. He did not know the full history of the swamp god. The system revealed only what each intelligence report contained. The god had shattered. A divine core fragment had been buried in a tomb. Authority had separated and remained in the muddy swamp. Gathering every piece could one day allow Lurels to become a true deity. That possibility was enormous enough to frighten him. Gods, dragons, demons, and transcendent beings already existed in this world. Becoming a deity was not a metaphor. It was a potential destination. For now, Lurels was a level 3 apprentice mage. The contrast kept his feet on the ground. He could imagine godhood after he secured food for his settlement. Until then, Blueheart mud fruit mattered more than divine dreams. That practical mindset had saved him repeatedly. He never spent all his resources chasing the most dramatic treasure. Even after learning about the 6-star fragment, he acted on 2-star intelligence first. Money came before divinity because the divine crystal still needed to be purchased. At the Rose Estate, he knew when to stop negotiating. A smart gambler left the table before greed destroyed the win. At the black market, he hid excitement. At the slave market, he bargained because Macon needed the lizard folk gone more than Lurels needed to appear desperate. During the wilderness journey, he avoided Stormbirds rather than proving his army's courage. Lurels had no interest in heroic stupidity. The Frontier Selection Hall had called every candidate a hero. Most of them would die. Courage without information could become a beautiful path to a grave. Lurels wanted results. City of the First Dawn was the result so far. Its existence justified every cautious decision. The Lizard Warriors understood battle more directly. They wanted enemies. Haggis especially lived for combat after his evolution. Lurels allowed that hunger to serve patrol duty. A restless hero guarding a frontier was useful. Every new encounter gave Haggis a chance to test his changed body. His regeneration remained almost unbelievable. The system stated that lost limbs could regrow through energy and vitality. Combined with natural scales and armor, Haggis could survive battles that would kill ordinary knights. Blood rage made prolonged combat favor him. The enemy might celebrate wounding him. That wound only pushed him closer to his strongest state. Lurels sometimes thought of the Hulk from Earth. The comparison made him smile. Fantasy had turned the idea into a lizard hero kneeling before him. The world remained terrifying. It was also incredible. Griffins flew from clouds. Unicorns pulled rose-covered carriages. Magic signs placed meaning directly into the mind. Dwarves built elevators. Gods left fragments in market relics. Lurels had died drowning in an ordinary world. His second life refused to be ordinary for even 3 days. That sense of wonder had not completely disappeared. Felina noticed it when he stared at her griffin like a child looking at a toy. He had not been afraid of the war beast's pressure. He had wanted to ride it. The same curiosity now pushed him deeper into the swamp. Every new race and magical creature expanded his understanding. The half-fish creatures were ugly and hostile. Their mucus still represented a biological adaptation to magic. The swamp tree people looked like ordinary vegetation until they moved. The mud insect carried a legend about hunting dragons. Even enemies taught Lurels more about Noah World. Knowledge gathered through observation could complement the system. He could not depend on a refresh for every decision. 5 reports every 5 days were powerful but limited. Between those reports, Lurels needed judgment. The system had not told him exactly how to bargain with Felina. It had not ordered him to mix lava saplings among common plants. It had not told him to buy extra relics so the divine crystal looked unimportant. Those choices came from him. Lurels recognized that distinction. The system was a weapon. The person holding it still determined where the blade struck. That thought gave him confidence without allowing arrogance. Another user might waste 6-star intelligence through greed or panic. Lurels had nearly trembled when the golden report appeared. He still forced himself to solve the money problem first. The result had changed his life. Now every refresh carried the possibility of another chain reaction. Midnight bells in Lawrence City had once announced July 10th. In the swamp, there were no dwarf clock towers. Time was measured by sunlight patrols, construction progress, and the system's internal countdown. The wilderness had its own rhythm. Lurels adapted. He had already adapted to death once. Drowning in his old world remained a distant memory. He had died trying to save someone. 3 days later, consciousness returned in a starving body. There had been no explanation. No god welcomed him, no prophecy declared him chosen. The first thing this world gave him was hunger. The second was a frontier death sentence. Only after he became a lord did the intelligence system activate. That timing remained an unanswered detail. Detection complete, you have become a lord. Those words suggested the system had been waiting for a condition. Lurels had met it by reclaiming the title and accepting the frontier path. He did not know who created the system or why it chose him. The source had revealed no answer. Lurels refused to invent one. He used the power he understood while keeping the mystery in mind. The system could detect events' hidden treasures, personal histories, and future dangers. Its range was extraordinary. It knew where Felina's blue crystal grass grew. It knew tomb raiders would set up a stall at sunrise. It predicted riots 20 days in advance. It knew the exact method to restore dragon scent. That accuracy was terrifying. Lurels trusted the information because repeated results had earned trust. The stall numbering trick at the black market had been the clearest proof. The old man's stall appeared to be number 23. Then tomb raiders placed a cloth in front of him at sunrise. Their temporary position became the true 23rd stall. The system had not been wrong. Lurels' interpretation had almost been too early. That memory taught him patience. Information could be exact, while still requiring careful observation. The same principle applied to the muddy swamp. The authority fragment existed. Finding the path to it might require understanding how the swamp changed. Lurels listened to every reaction from his divine core. He watched local creatures, he mapped territories, he gathered life essence. The search continued beneath ordinary work. City building and divine ambition were not separate. A stable base gave him soldiers, supplies, and time. The authority fragment could then strengthen the ruler who protected that base. Each side supported the other. Felina had advanced because blue crystal grass completed a potion. Lurels had advanced because a divine crystal completed a condition. This world rewarded the right resource at the right moment. The intelligence system specialized in identifying those moments. Lurels intended to become better at exploiting them. His first 5 reports had already changed everything. A 1-star bribe had been ignored. A 1-star ogre attack had been beyond his reach. 2 2-star opportunities created money and friendship. 1 6-star secret gave him divinity. Later 2-star reports created Haggis and protected the convoy. 3-star intelligence pointed toward food and territory survival. The star system had become a language of priorities. Lurels read it like a battlefield commander reading flags. High value did not always mean immediate action. The divine authority was priceless, but he still needed an army. A low-level danger could still kill an unprepared person. Earth gnomes were only 1 star, yet Lurels still ordered battle formation. Preparation remained constant. That habit separated survival from luck. Jim had once hoped Duke Lauren would reject the frontier application. The old former knight understood the wilderness. He knew orcs, vampires, undead, dark elves, and demons waited beyond the border. To Jim, rejection meant saving Lurels' life. Approval had looked like disaster. Lurels now wondered what Jim would think if he saw City of the First Dawn. The old man had watched a starving neighbor receive a sealed document. He had no idea a blue panel would appear moments later. Lurels remembered Jim's kindness. When he eventually returned to Lawrence City, he intended to find him. Success meant little if he forgot the people who treated him as human before he possessed power. That belief separated Jim from the nobles who noticed him only after Felina's greeting. Lurels did not hate every noble. He had become one again. He simply understood how quickly social eyes changed. Patched clothes made Rose Estate guards suspicious. A noble robe made frontier lords recognize his crest. Felina's rose bag made Macon swallow his questions. Strength, wealth, and connection changed the same man without changing his face. Lurels stored that lesson beside the system's reports. Politics would eventually reach the muddy swamp. Successful frontier territories created powerful families. Lawrence City itself had started as a frontier settlement 1,000 years earlier. The first Duke of Lauren had accomplished what other nobles called impossible. Lurels had pointed to the deepest territory because he knew a secret. The Hall interpreted the choice as courage. That misunderstanding benefited him. Reputation was already forming around his name. Felina called his courage admirable. Other frontier lords had shown respect. If City of the First Dawn survived, those memories would become part of Lurel's image, a man who chose the muddy swamp when everyone else was afraid. Legends often began by removing the hidden information that made a choice rational. Lurel's found that amusing. He had not chosen death for glory, he had chosen the location of divine authority. Still reaching it required the courage others imagined. Knowing treasure existed did not remove the monsters around it. The curd ratman had bitten through armor. The half-fish creatures had surrounded him. The decayed half-humans remained ahead. Lurel's path was rational, not safe. That distinction defined his second life. He did not seek danger for excitement. He accepted danger when the reward could transform his future. 3 silver coins on saplings had risked 4 months of food. 20 gold on a scratched crystal had risked most of his first fortune. Choosing the muddy swamp risked his life and title. Each gamble was backed by intelligence. Lurel's never confused calculated risk with blind faith. That was why he survived. The wilderness would test the method again and again. Nearby white waterflowers continued swaying, their fresh scent mixed with distant traces of blood. The image captured the muddy swamp perfectly. Beauty floated above violence. Life grew everywhere. Death waited beneath it. Lurel's felt strangely suited to the place. His own second life had begun in death. A fallen noble body had become the vessel for a new soul. A broken divine core had become the center of a magic seed. Slaves had become soldiers. Empty grassland had become City of the First Dawn. Transformation surrounded him. Perhaps that was why he noticed value in things others rejected. He had been given a rejected life himself. The original body was weak, starving, and already dead. Lurel's took what remained and moved forward. Now the swamp was doing the same under his rule. Mud became a building foundation. Hostile tree people became guardians. Monster corpses became life essence. The frontier became home. None of those changes erased the danger. They gave danger a purpose. Lurel's looked toward his warriors. 30 had been lightly wounded in the half-fish battle. Swamp Blessing had prevented those wounds from becoming serious. The ability continued, proving its strategic value. A lord who could heal his front line changed how soldiers fought. The lizard folk already ignored pain. Knowing Lurel's could restore them made retreat feel even less necessary. That created incredible aggression. It also created responsibility. Lurel's had to avoid pushing their worship into meaningless deaths. The slave market had shown what they were willing to endure. More than 100 had died resisting control. 3 heads exploded during Lurel's negotiation alone. These creatures valued defiance above survival. Divine loyalty redirected that extreme nature toward Lurel's. He needed to be worthy of the force he commanded. Haggis's promise to become his weapon had sounded simple. A weapon could be broken if its owner used it carelessly. Lurel's wanted Haggis alive. He wanted every useful warrior to grow with the territory. Life Essence offered another path. By absorbing energy from enemies, his people could become stronger through victory. The progress from 50% to 70% proved the process was accelerating. Stronger prey produced more essence. The temptation to hunt powerful enemies grew. Lurel's controlled it. Level difference remained real. 500 level 10 decayed half-humans were not a convenient source of energy. They were a force capable of destroying his army. He would fight them when preparation made victory possible. Until then, exploration continued. Resources and weaker threats would strengthen City of the First Dawn. Every patrol expanded the territory's known world. Every map mark reduced uncertainty. Bane could plan farther. Haggis could position guards better. Lurel's could connect new discoveries to future intelligence reports. Knowledge accumulated like bricks. The settlement itself accumulated structure. The first days were chaotic. Wagons stood everywhere. Workers slept near supplies. Gradually, Bane imposed order. Materials moved into designated zones. Raised platforms protected food from swamp water. Paths connected work areas. The swamp dwellers gained confidence. Their fear of the lizard folk faded as days of shared work passed. Haggis and his team searched around but found no signs of the half-fish creature habitat. Seeing this, Lurel's didn't waste any more time and continued forward. The surprised cry ahead cut through the gentle scent of the waterflowers, and every warrior instantly returned to alert silence. Lurel's looked across the swamp and understood that this land would never become peaceful simply because he had claimed it. Still, he was no longer the starving man who once counted copper coins beside a loaf of black bread. He now had divine power, loyal warriors, living guardians, and a territory that had begun to answer his will. From the ruins of a fallen name, Lurels had finally built the first true foundation of his own future.